Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with reference recordings. And today we're talking about Handel's Messiah. Now, a couple of you have already started talking about Handel's Messiah, mentioning what you think the reference recording should be, and you're right. And also asking the question, what are we going to do about period instrument performances of this music? And my answer is really twofold. Number one, in some cases, we just don't. We don't talk about period instrument performances because the consensus doesn't exist as to what the best performance of the work is that's a period instrument performance. And where it doesn't, it simply doesn't. It's that simple. In other cases where there is a consensus, then we talk about more than one recording, as we've had no problem doing, where there were various reasons why there had to be more than one reference. And that's the case with Handel's Messiah. I mean, that's really the case here. And so we'll start with the normal recording, the one that a couple of you already mentioned. It was, of course, Colin Davis. Colin Davis on Phillips, now Decca, featuring a marvelous collection of soloists: Heather Harper, Helen Watts, John Wakefield, John Shirley Quirk, and like other people with the London Symphony Orchestra and Choir under John Aldous. You know, this was as close. What was the year of this thing? Said no, 93 is the CD, but 66, 1966. This was as close to an authentic style interpretation as we got back in the day, with smaller orchestral forces, a small crack choir, but played on modern instruments and very beautifully. The fact of the matter is, this has as much claim to authenticity as anything authentic, because the authentic elements that we got are, for the most part, conjectural anyway, other than going back and perhaps, diddling the text in various ways. But it's okay. The bottom line was, this was the modern reference for Messiah, and it still is. It's a wonderful performance that hasn't dated a whit, not one single little soupçon of datedosity. It's very, very, very good. But then the period instrument movement happened, and we get the reference on period instruments, which was, of course, Christopher Hogwood on L'Oiseau Lyre. That was an earth-shattering release. It was a paradigm shift in our understanding of what Baroque music should sound like. The irony of this particular choice, though, and I have it sitting around in a box, so I'm not waving it around, but I have it, and it's a very good performance of Messiah, no question about it, is that it was made at a time, and this is where things kind of really get interesting, when the period instrument movement was taking off in tandem with the record industry going nuts and releasing recording after recording after recording. So Hogwood came out, and it was startling, and it was fresh, and it was new, and it was very nicely done. But then we got Gardner and Pinnock and Harnoncourt, and all the period instrument people just piled in and started doing new recordings of Messiah. And at the same time, there were still superb versions of Messiah with modern forces. I mean, there was the Shaw version on Telarc, and they're still coming. They're still coming all over the place. We get wonderful new Messiahs every single year, most of them now on period instruments. And a lot of them demonstrably finer than Hogwood's, because Hogwood, they were still learning how to play their instruments, and we had singers who were more comfortable, especially countertenors, who were far more effective in their roles than they were in Hogwood's day. And so Hogwood's recording is a reference recording for sure because of what it represented when it came out, but it's been superseded on period instruments many times over, I think. I really do think so. And you can read the reviews at ClassicsToday.com for all these new ones that have come out, and you can see exactly what we're talking about. A lot of what Hogwood did was revolutionary when it first came out, but it hasn't held up all that well. And as a result, we have to be a little careful when we talk about the period instrument reference recordings, because, one of the reasons we have trouble with period instrument reference recordings is because they all hit the market within a brief period of time, within a decade or two. And so there wasn't any way to really say, aha, that was the interpretation that really set the standard for all others. It just didn't happen. And, it goes to the question that some of you asked about whether there are modern reference recordings. It has nothing to do with what kind of instrument or approach or whatever it was. It has to do with the availability of multiple versions of the same things at the same time with the same basic parameters. So Hogwood is the reference. No question about it, because of its importance in the history of recordings of Handel's Messiah, and its importance in the history of the period instrument movement as well. There's no question about that. But it's also definitely not the best Messiah on period instruments. And so the irony here is that if you're looking for recordings to add to your collection of Handel's Messiah, you're certainly going to want to have this one, the Davis, which is marvelous. It is still marvelous. And if you want one on period instruments, you should not worry about the fact that Hogwood was the reference recording. You should get one of the best versions on period instruments, for which I suggest you take a look at the reviews on classicstoday.com or get Pinox on Archive, which was my personal preference, which I still think is unbelievably fabulous, or someone else like that. And get your period instrument, and get your period instrument Messiah that way, because then you'll be better set, I think, for actual listening rather than for making a historical inquiry into the history of the discography of Handel's Messiah. And that is the story, and a fascinating one it is. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.